Hey everyone, it's your favorite menace to Carthaginian society. Um, and today I wanted to talk about St. Augustine's Confessions and its effect on my life, as well as the art of autobiography and why I think he does it so well. Yeah, I mean, I'll go into a little bit of history first, at least my history with the text. And I first read Augustine's Confessions um back in 2019 at the age of 20, almost 21. I read it in the summer, I believe, so I was almost 21. And I forget exactly why um I decided to read it then because I had heard of it before, right? It's a classical text. That's what I'm into. That's what I eventually got my master's degree in, but I was in undergrad at that time. But yeah, and it just really it kind of shocked me at how real it was. Basically, for those of you that don't know, the confessions, aside from being actual confessions of Saint Augustine, it's basically like his autobiography, guys. And Saint Augustine was bishop of Hippo Regius, which was a Roman city, I think also in North Africa, but he was a Romanized Amazi, or I think is commonly but incorrectly said in the West, Berber man. His father was a Roman polytheist. I'm assuming he had been assimilated, right? Duh, because he said his family. I'm pretty sure he kind of implies that his parents could speak the indigenous Hamazi language, but they mostly spoke Latin at home. I think that's kind of like how a lot of, like, I don't know, multi-ethnic parents do it. He was born in the city of Tagaste, which is in modern day Algeria, although I looked it up and please, I apologize for the pronunciation. It's in a city called Sukharas. Today, which is again interesting, um, when it comes to the Roman Empire, outside of, you know, Carthage, because of its own empire, Roman Africa doesn't really get that much attention, and it's just interesting to excuse me again seeing Amazim and excuse me um end his life, because that was already a pretty uncommon thing. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. It just is very interesting to me because most quote unquote biographies or autobiographies from this period are um what they called hagiographies, right? They're meant to, highlight the lives of holy men and, like, oftentimes they have miracles and like supernatural miracles. There are a few things which Augustine considers miracles in the Confessions, but they're not like crazy, like like supernatural healings or something like that. In fact, he's actually kind of what we would probably deem rationalistic, especially when he's talking about what he formerly believed in terms of like his dealings with the Manichaeans. The only source of that we have, by the way, like, or one of the only sources, and it's incredibly biased, but that's also another great thing about uh the Confessions, because he was actually like active in Manichaean circles. um so yeah, anyway, and you know, guys, it's just so real. Again, it's not a hagiography. It, like, Augustine is very brutal, and sometimes uh I would say a little too hard on himself, maybe. When I read it the second time this past year, last year, in graduate school, in the theology segment of my program, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the Confessions, but one of the things as an autobiography that stood out to me and the other students was the fact that Augustine is kind of self-flagellating, but and like, things which we would consider kind of like, um for example, like, stuff that probably doesn't even really matter that much. For example, the infamous pear tree, right? Where he steals the pear trees and then just, you, or not the entire tree, he steals the pears with his friends in Carthage, even though it's not his tree. It was another person's tree. And he did it not because he wanted the pears, but just cause, like, again, like I said, menace to Carthaginian society. But like, you know it's one of those stories that you might tell your grandkids or something. Like, when I was a little whippersnapper, like, I stole some pears with my friend and the neighbor chased us off or whatever, right? But like, um it's, you know I think we have to remember that, like, yes, we're looking at Augustine um from the perspective of modern people, and to us he's a very historical figure, and we read his words. We never knew him, but there is a person, especially in autobiographies, right, where of course people have a vested interest. It's about themselves. And once again, it's not a hagiography, right? He doesn't pull any punches about, his shortcomings, even if he is a little too hard on himself. Like, you know, I have things in my life which to my parents seem kind of like, oh, whatever, but to me they were really big moments, and uh stuff like that. And like, I feel like every person has that. Um, so, you know, to us, it's just, oh, a dumb pear tree, whatever, man. You did that when you were like 14, 15, whatever. You were going to school in Carthage, learning rhetoric. Okay, bro. Like, why do you care so much? But, like, you know, you have to remember this is a church father, man. Literally, like, or I'm sorry, I think a doctor of the church, or both, maybe. And so, like, of course, it matters to him. Um, and I would still maybe kind of consider it a hagiography, right? Because the end is like uh, uh allegorical analysis of the Bible and stuff like that. That's like the last book or two books, I think. So, but like, you know, I mean, bro, I still can't help but think like for all my American viewers, like the virgin Johnny Appleseed apple tree versus the Chad Augustinian pear tree bearing fruits worthy of repentance. Like that's how I feel about it, and like um yeah, it just it's just so real. Like another thing that honestly it made me cry both times rereading it, both in 2019 and in 2024. Um the way he talks about number one losing his best friend. I don't know if you guys remember that part, but like yeah, I can relate. I feel like we've all been there. Like I mean, even if they didn't pass away or anything, I feel like we all have those relationships where they kind of just ended without closure, or they in fact didn't, they weren't seen through all the way to the end, or they were taken away from us. And like, um, yeah, I'm sad, as many of you know, that those types of friendships aren't as common in society anymore, in Western society anymore, as we try to like, or tend to like become atomized and individualized. Like, still, it's really heartbreaking. And then, um, his son, Adeodatus, and you know, I have to be honest, guys. Like, Augustine was a manho. He just really was. But, like, you know, losing a son, regardless under the circumstances, and he's very honest about his promiscuity and the way he treated women horribly as objects. And right, he had his manho phase, but once again, bro, that man lost a child. And um even talking about it right now makes me want to tear up, man. And the way he talks about Adeodatus, and like how smart he was and how much he cared for him, and the conversations and debates that they had. I mean, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of, and this will get its own video, but like my my own father, like we had our own specified time to like chit chat and stuff like that. He wasn't at home a lot because he was working, but when I lived with him, like, we would always find time to do that. And yeah, like those moments are still so special to me, and I still look back on them so fondly, and I learned a lot of things from him during those times. So yeah, I like I can only imagine being a father in that situation, and like it crushes me. And then of course, um uh his mother Monica, man, that also destroyed me, bro. But and even though like I'm an atheist and everything, I still am glad that, you know, Monica, Saint Monica, slash, did ultimately get to see her son convert to Christianity for what it's worth, because that was really her only wish in life, pretty much. And the way he talks about when she finally does pass away, it's like, um and the fact that I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, Adeodatus was there, and so were other members of the people going to Milan, or I forget exactly where, or Hippo. I can't really remember, but like still they were traveling, I believe, and yeah, just totally heartbreaking. I mean, I've been honest here about how much my mom means to me and how much she's done for me and how important she is to my life, just like my both my parents. But like, yeah, I can't even imagine it, guys. Like and that's one of the reasons why I love the confession so much, because as a man, we don't get too many opportunities to um really look back and like just be honest about our emotions and the things we're feeling. And Augustine, for men, I have to be honest, and I feel like he's definitely a role model for those of us who like grew up around Christian culture, both Protestant and Catholic, and like um you know that's one of the things that I think make the autobiography harder to sort of um do correctly and well, because like almost anyone can look on the outside and critique and form a narrative um around someone else's life, right? you typically, not always, but typically it's very easy to like, look at um the events of a person's life which is not yourself and be like, okay, yeah, he or she or they could have, you know, miscalculated here or changed this here for this other thing to go right, but to look within oneself and to be so honest, brutally honest at times, right? Um it's so hard to explain, but it does take a certain type of humility and like really a deep understanding of oneself throughout the years and one's mistakes, one's advantages, and not everyone is like that. I certainly struggled to be that way. I'm not sure I could write an autobiography of my own life. It'd be very hard, I think, because I'd always worry that I um was not writing things in an accurate and nuanced way like Augustine, and like, I don't know, for that especially I think the Confessions deserves to be remembered, as well as kind of just like I mentioned in the beginning, it's not strictly, yeah, it's technically autobiography in the widest sense, but he does get into, various philosophical and theological questions as well. And like, um, I wouldn't consider it strictly a work of theology or hagiography or autobiography necessarily. It's really unlike anything that was ever written up to that point, and in some cases still is written. Like, there's this discussion on time where he just takes kind of a diatribe within the narrative to talk about it, but it's like transitioned to in such a way where it doesn't really feel like it, and I don't know, it's just something like, imagine a full-on like ontological and metaphysical discussion on what time is and how every aspect of time is kind of just the present in a way, if you really think about it. That's kind of his main point as I took it, and like, I don't know, it's just kind of cool to have that in an once again in an autobiography. But like, yeah, guys, I suggest you read it because it's really a book that will change your life. All right, bye. Thank you.